My fiancé's sister who raised him after their parents died thinks she owns our wedding. When I finally put my foot down, she admitted she believes he'll always choose her over me because their bond is stronger than marriage. I need to vent about what's been happening with my wedding planning. I, 28F, am getting married to Bennett, 30M, in 4 months. We've been together for 3 years and engaged for 8 months now. Bennett has a sister named Madeline, 26F, who lives about 2 hours away but visits frequently. She's single, works in event planning, and has very strong opinions about everything. When we first got engaged, she seemed excited and offered to help with wedding planning since it's her field. At first, I thought having professional help would be great. Madeline came over the weekend after we got engaged with a huge binder full of ideas. She had already researched venues, picked out color schemes, and even found potential caterers. I was overwhelmed but grateful someone was so enthusiastic about helping. The problem started when I realized Madeline wasn't really helping plan my wedding. She was planning the wedding she wanted. Every suggestion I made got shot down. When I said I wanted a small outdoor ceremony at the Botanical Gardens, she said outdoor weddings were tacky and unpredictable. When I showed her the simple dress I loved, she said it was too plain and found 3 alternatives that cost twice as much. Bennett's parents passed away when he was in college, so Madeline is really his only close family. She raised him for 2 years after their parents died, even though she was only 19 at the time. Bennett always talks about how much he owes her and how she sacrificed her early 20s to take care of him. I get that their relationship is special, but Madeline acts like she's planning her own wedding. She booked appointments at venues I never agreed to see. She called florists and gave them completely different specifications than what I wanted. When I confronted her about this, she said she was just trying to give me options and that I should trust her expertise. The worst part was when she tried to invite her friends to the wedding. I had given her a list of our invited guests to help with organizing, and somehow, she added 12 people I had never met. When I asked Bennett about it, he said Madeline mentioned that some of her friends wanted to come and she thought it would be nice to include them. I started keeping wedding planning information from Madeline, but Bennett kept sharing details with her anyway. Every time we made a decision, Madeline would call with suggestions for changes. She convinced Bennett that our chosen photographer was overpriced and found someone cheaper who specialized in a completely different style than what we wanted. Things got worse when Madeline decided our guest list was too small. We planned for 80 people, mostly close friends and family. Madeline said this was embarrassing and that Bennett deserved a bigger celebration. She started talking about expanding the venue and inviting Bennett's extended family members he hadn't spoken to in years. I finally had enough when Madeline showed up at my dress fitting uninvited. My mom, sister, and best friend were there to help me choose between 2 dresses I loved. Madeline walked in like she belonged there and immediately started criticizing both options. She said neither dress was formal enough for the wedding she had in mind and that I needed something with more presence. My mom asked who invited Madeline, and Madeline said Bennett told her about the appointment. This was a lie because I specifically hadn't told Bennett the date and time to avoid exactly this situation. Madeline must have called the bridal shop pretending to be me or my mom to get the information. Madeline then pulled out her phone and started showing everyone pictures of completely different dresses. These were all much more expensive and elaborate than anything I would ever wear. When I said I preferred my original choices, Madeline started explaining why I was wrong in front of my family and friends. My sister finally told Madeline that this was my wedding and I could wear whatever I wanted. Madeline got upset and said she was only trying to help because she had professional experience and knew what would photograph well. She said my family obviously didn't understand the importance of getting everything right. After Madeline left, my mom asked me what was going on. I explained how Madeline had been taking over all the wedding planning and Bennett wouldn't tell her to back off. My mom said this wasn't normal and that I needed to set boundaries before the wedding day itself. When I got home, I told Bennett what happened at the dress fitting. He said Madeline was just excited and trying to help, and that I should appreciate having someone with professional knowledge involved. He said Madeline's feelings were hurt that I wasn't accepting her help gracefully. I explained that Madeline wasn't helping, she was controlling everything and ignoring what I wanted. Bennett said I was being ungrateful and that Madeline had sacrificed a lot for him over the years. He said the least I could do was let her help with the wedding planning. This led to our first major fight as an engaged couple. I told Bennett that if he wanted Madeline to plan his wedding, maybe he should marry her instead. Bennett said I was being ridiculous and jealous of his relationship with his sister. The next week, Madeline called me directly to apologize for the dress fitting incident. She said she got carried away because she wanted everything to be perfect for Bennett. Then she immediately started suggesting compromises for the wedding plans, which weren't really compromises at all. Madeline proposed that we use her venue choice but my preferred flowers. She said we could keep our photographer but use her recommended caterer. Every suggestion still involved changing things I had already decided on. I told Madeline I appreciated her enthusiasm but that Bennett and I needed to make our own decisions. Madeline got quiet and then said she hoped I understood how important this wedding was to Bennett and how much she wanted it to be special for him. After that conversation, Madeline started going around me completely. She would call Bennett at work with wedding suggestions. She sent him links to different venues and asked him to convince me to reconsider our choices. Bennett started coming home with new ideas that were obviously for Madeline. The breaking point came when I found out Madeline had put down a deposit on a different venue without telling me. Bennett said Madeline was worried our chosen venue might get booked up and wanted to secure a backup option. The backup option was 3 times more expensive and required a different date than what we had planned. When I asked Bennett how Madeline could put down a deposit without our names or credit card, he got defensive. Eventually he admitted that he had given Madeline permission to secure the venue and promised to pay her back. I realized that Bennett and Madeline were making wedding decisions together and then trying to convince me to go along with them. This was supposed to be our wedding, but it had become Bennett and Madeline's wedding with me as a guest. I told Bennett he needed to choose between having the wedding we planned together or having Madeline plan whatever she wanted, but I wouldn't be part of a wedding where I had no say in the decisions. Bennett said I was being dramatic and that we could work everything out. He said Madeline just wanted the best for us and that I should try to understand her perspective. That's where we are now. Bennett thinks I'm overreacting and that Madeline is just trying to help. I think Madeline is taking over our wedding and Bennett is letting her because he feels guilty about their past. Am I wrong to put my foot down about this? Should I just let Madeline have her way to keep the peace, or am I right to insist on having a say in my own wedding plans? Update 1: I posted a few weeks ago about my future sister-in-law taking over my wedding planning. A lot of people told me to stand my ground and have a serious conversation with my fiancé. I took that advice, and things have gotten much more complicated. After reading the comments on my original post, I decided to sit down with Bennett and have a complete honest conversation about Madeline and the wedding. I waited until a Saturday morning when we both had time to talk without distractions. I started by explaining that I wasn't trying to exclude Madeline or hurt her feelings, but that I needed to have a voice in planning my own wedding. Bennett listened without interrupting, which I thought was a good sign. Then I brought up specific examples of how Madeline had been overriding my decisions. I mentioned the venue deposit, the dress fitting incident, and how she had been calling vendors to change specifications I had already given them. Bennett was quiet for a long time after I finished talking. Finally, he said he understood why I was frustrated, but that I needed to understand Madeline's position too. He explained that Madeline had always dreamed of planning a big wedding, and since she wasn't in a relationship, she was living vicariously through our wedding. I asked Bennett if he thought it was fair for Madeline to live out her wedding fantasies through our actual wedding. He said it wasn't that simple because Madeline had given up so much for him when their parents died. Bennett then told me something he had never mentioned before. When their parents died, Madeline had been engaged to someone she had dated for 2 years. She broke off the engagement to focus on raising Bennett and managing their parents' affairs. Her fiancé couldn't handle the sudden responsibilities and ended the relationship. This explained a lot about Madeline's behavior, but I told Bennett that her past sacrifices didn't give her the right to control our wedding. Bennett agreed in principle but said he felt terrible about asking Madeline to step back when she was so excited about helping. We reached what I thought was a compromise. Bennett would talk to Madeline and explain that while we appreciated her input, we needed to make the final decisions ourselves. He would ask her to focus on specific tasks like coordinating with vendors rather than making major planning decisions. Bennett called Madeline that evening and had what sounded like a long conversation. I could hear Madeline's voice getting louder through the phone, but Bennett stayed calm throughout the discussion. After he hung up, Bennett said Madeline was hurt but that she understood our position. He said she had agreed to step back from the major planning decisions but wanted to stay involved with the coordination aspects. I thought this was a reasonable solution, and for about a week, things seemed better. Madeline stopped calling with venue suggestions and didn't override any of the decisions Bennett and I made together. Then I found out what Madeline was actually doing during this supposedly quiet period. My maid of honor, Jessica, called me on a Thursday evening to ask about changes to the bachelorette party plans. Jessica said Madeline had contacted her to suggest modifications to the itinerary I had approved. Madeline had told Jessica that the restaurant we picked was too casual and that we should go somewhere more upscale. She also suggested adding activities like a wine tasting and a spa day, which would have tripled the cost of the party. Jessica asked Madeline how she got involved in bachelorette party planning, and Madeline said Bennett had asked her to help coordinate since she had event planning experience. When I confronted Bennett about this, he said he hadn't asked Madeline to get involved with the bachelorette party. He called Madeline to ask what was going on, and she said she was just offering suggestions to help make the party more memorable. I realized that Madeline hadn't actually stepped back from wedding planning at all. She had just found different ways to stay involved by going through other people instead of talking to me directly. The next day, my florist called to confirm changes to the centerpiece order. Madeline had called the florist pretending to be me and requested completely different flowers in different colors. The florist was confused because the changes contradicted everything we had discussed in our previous meetings. I had to spend an hour on the phone with the florist explaining that I hadn't requested any changes and confirming my original order. The florist said this kind of confusion happens sometimes with weddings where multiple people were involved in planning. When I told Bennett about the florist incident, he was finally as frustrated as I was. He called Madeline immediately and asked her to explain why she was calling vendors without permission. I could hear Madeline crying through the phone. She told Bennett that she was just trying to fix problems she had noticed with our wedding plans. She said the flowers I had chosen wouldn't photograph well and that she was trying to save us from making mistakes. Bennett told Madeline that she needed to stop contacting our vendors and that any suggestions she had should go through him or me first. Madeline agreed but said she was hurt that we didn't trust her professional judgment. After Bennett hung up, he apologized for not handling the situation better from the beginning. He said he hadn't realized how much Madeline was interfering because she had been going behind our backs. I thought we had finally resolved the issue, but things got worse the following week. My wedding dress arrived at the bridal shop, and they called to schedule a fitting appointment. When I arrived for the appointment, the shop owner said there had been a mistake with my order. Instead of the simple dress I had chosen and paid for, they had ordered one of the elaborate dresses Madeline had shown me during the chaotic fitting appointment. The shop owner said someone had called claiming to be me and requested the change. The dress they had ordered cost $800 more than my original choice. The shop owner showed me the signed change order, and the signature looked like mine but wasn't quite right. I had to explain that I hadn't authorized any changes and that someone had impersonated me to modify the order. The shop owner was apologetic but said they would need to special order my original dress, which would take 6 weeks. With 4 months until the wedding, 6 weeks should have been fine, but the shop owner warned me that special orders sometimes took longer than expected and that I should have a backup plan. I was furious that Madeline had not only ignored our conversation about stepping back but had actually escalated her interference to the point of forging my signature. When I got home, Bennett was already on the phone with Madeline. Apparently, the bridal shop had called him when they couldn't reach me to confirm the dress change. Bennett was telling Madeline that she had crossed a line and that she couldn't pretend to be me to make changes to wedding vendors. Madeline was crying and saying she was only trying to help because she could see I was making mistakes that would ruin the wedding photos. Bennett told Madeline that she was no longer allowed to contact any of our wedding vendors for any reason. Madeline asked if this meant she was no longer welcome to help with the wedding at all. Bennett looked at me while Madeline was asking this question. I shook my head, and Bennett told Madeline that we needed to handle the rest of the wedding planning ourselves. Madeline hung up without saying goodbye, and Bennett said she was probably more hurt than she had ever been in her life. I told Bennett I was sorry that Madeline was hurt, but that she had brought this situation on herself by ignoring our boundaries and forging my signature. Bennett agreed that Madeline had gone too far, but he was clearly torn between supporting me and protecting Madeline's feelings. The next morning, Bennett's aunt called to ask about the wedding plans. She said Madeline had called her crying about being excluded from the wedding planning and that Bennett was choosing his fiancé over his family. Bennett's aunt said she understood that brides should have the final say in wedding decisions, but that it seemed harsh to completely cut Madeline out when she had sacrificed so much for Bennett over the years. This phone call made Bennett start second-guessing our decision to exclude Madeline from vendor communications. He said maybe we had been too harsh and that we should find a way to include Madeline that would make everyone happy. I told Bennett that Madeline had proven she couldn't be trusted to respect our boundaries, and that including her in any capacity would lead to more problems. Bennett said he understood my position but that he felt terrible about hurting Madeline when she was only trying to help in her own way. That's where we are now. Bennett supports me in principle but feels guilty about excluding Madeline. Madeline is telling extended family that she's being punished for caring too much about Bennett's wedding. I'm starting to wonder if Bennett will ever be able to put our relationship first when it conflicts with Madeline's wants. The wedding is in 3 months, and I don't know if we can get through this without someone getting permanently hurt. Update 2. My last update was about 6 weeks ago when my fiancé and I had decided to exclude his sister Madeline from all wedding vendor communications after she forged my signature to change my dress order. Things have gotten much worse since then, and I'm not sure my relationship is going to survive until the wedding. After we told Madeline she couldn't contact our vendors anymore, she seemed to accept the decision for about 2 weeks. Bennett was relieved that the drama was over, and I thought we could finally focus on enjoying our engagement. Then my mom called to tell me that Madeline had contacted her about hosting a bridal shower. My mom was surprised because I had already told her I didn't want a bridal shower, and she couldn't understand why Madeline would be organizing one without asking me first. Madeline had told my mom that Bennett mentioned I was too busy with work to plan a shower myself, so Madeline wanted to take care of it as a surprise. Madeline had already picked a date, reserved a venue, and started inviting people. My mom asked Madeline for my guest list, and Madeline said she was handling all the invitations herself. When my mom asked to see the list, Madeline said it was a surprise and that my mom would just have to trust her judgment about who to invite. My mom felt uncomfortable with this arrangement and called me instead of giving Madeline any information about my friends or extended family. When I told Bennett about Madeline's shower plans, he looked genuinely confused. He said he had never told Madeline that I wanted a bridal shower, and that he knew I had specifically decided against having one. Bennett called Madeline to ask about the shower, and she said she thought every bride deserved a celebration even if they were too modest to ask for one. She said she wanted to do something special for me since I had been working so hard on wedding planning. Bennett told Madeline that I didn't want a bridal shower and that she needed to cancel whatever arrangements she had made. Madeline got upset and said she had already put down deposits and sent invitations to people. Madeline asked Bennett who she had invited, and she admitted she had invited all of her friends plus some of Bennett's female cousins and co-workers I had never met. She hadn't invited any of my actual friends or family members because she didn't have their contact information. Bennett told Madeline that a bridal shower for the bride should probably include the bride's actual friends and family. Madeline said she was planning to ask me for my friends' information once the party was closer. This meant Madeline was planning a party supposedly for me, but actually for herself and her friends, where I would be the guest of honor at an event full of strangers. Bennett told Madeline to cancel the shower, and Madeline started crying about how much money she had already spent and how excited her friends were about the party. Bennett offered to reimburse Madeline for any deposits she had made, but Madeline said money wasn't the point. She said she just wanted to do something nice for me and that I was being ungrateful for all her efforts. After Bennett hung up, he said Madeline had agreed to cancel the shower but that she was very hurt by our reaction. He said Madeline felt like we were rejecting her attempts to be involved in our wedding celebration. I pointed out that Madeline kept trying to be involved by making decisions without asking us first, and that this was the third time she had done something major without our permission. Bennett agreed that Madeline's approach was problematic, but he said he could see why she felt excluded when we kept shutting down her attempts to help. 2 days later, Madeline called me directly for the first time since the dress incident. She said she wanted to apologize for the shower misunderstanding and ask if we could start over with a better approach to including her in wedding planning. Madeline said she realized she had been making assumptions about what we wanted instead of asking us directly. She promised that if we gave her another chance, she would run everything by us before taking any action. Madeline sounded sincere, and I was tired of the ongoing drama, so I agreed to let her help with one specific task. I asked Madeline to coordinate the transportation for our out-of-town guests from their hotels to the wedding venue. This seemed like a task where Madeline could use her event planning skills without being able to override any of our major decisions. Madeline was excited about the assignment and promised to handle it perfectly. For 3 weeks, Madeline did exactly what she had promised. She called me with updates about the transportation arrangements, asked for approval before making any bookings, and stayed within the budget we had given her. Bennett and I started to think that maybe Madeline had finally understood our boundaries and that we could have a peaceful wedding with her help. Then, 2 weeks ago, our wedding venue coordinator called with a question about the ceremony setup. She said someone had contacted her to make major changes to our ceremony layout and wanted to confirm the modifications with us. The changes included moving the ceremony to a different part of the venue, adding a string quartet we hadn't booked, and rearranging the seating to accommodate 50 additional guests. The venue coordinator said the person who called had identified herself as the wedding planner and had seemed very knowledgeable about event coordination. The caller had explained that the bride and groom were too busy to handle the details and had delegated the coordination to her. I knew immediately that Madeline had contacted the venue, but I couldn't understand why she would make such major changes when she had been doing so well with the transportation task. When I confronted Bennett about this, he was as confused as I was. He called Madeline to ask about the venue changes, and Madeline's explanation was completely different from what I expected. Madeline told Bennett that she had been contacted by his cousin Mark, who said he was planning to bring his entire extended family to the wedding. Madeline said Mark had told her that Bennett had invited all of Mark's relatives but had forgotten to tell me about the additional guests. Madeline said she was trying to be helpful by accommodating the extra guests and making sure the ceremony setup could handle the larger crowd. Bennett told Madeline that he had never invited Mark's extended family and that he had no idea what she was talking about. Madeline seemed genuinely surprised and said Mark had been very convincing when he called her about the wedding arrangements. Bennett called Mark to ask about this conversation, and Mark said he had never talked to Madeline about the wedding. Mark said he was planning to attend the wedding with just his wife and 2 children, exactly as we had planned. When Bennett called Madeline back with this information, Madeline said she must have been confused about who had called her. She said someone claiming to be Mark had contacted her about bringing additional family members to the wedding. Madeline apologized for the misunderstanding and said she would contact the venue to cancel all the changes she had made. But when I called the venue coordinator to confirm the cancellations, she said Madeline had never called back to reverse the changes. I had to spend an hour on the phone explaining the situation and making sure our original ceremony plans were still in place. Bennett called Madeline again to ask why she hadn't canceled the venue changes as promised. Madeline said she had been busy with work and had forgotten to make the call, but that she would do it immediately. I realized that Madeline had lied about someone calling her regarding additional guests. She had made up the story about Mark's extended family to justify making major changes to our wedding ceremony. When I explained this to Bennett, he initially defended Madeline and said maybe she had genuinely been confused about the phone call. But then Bennett called Madeline's phone company to check her call records for the days she claimed to have received the call from Mark. Bennett is on a family plan with Madeline, so he had access to her account information. The call records showed that Madeline hadn't received any calls from Mark or anyone else on the day in question. Madeline had made up the entire story about being contacted regarding additional wedding guests. Bennett was finally convinced that Madeline had been deliberately lying to us, but he was more hurt than angry. He said he couldn't understand why Madeline would make up such an elaborate story instead of just asking if she could make suggestions about the ceremony setup. When Bennett confronted Madeline about lying regarding the phone call, she broke down crying and admitted that she had made up the story. Madeline said she had seen ways to improve our ceremony setup but knew we would reject her suggestions if she presented them directly. Madeline said she had thought that if the changes seemed to come from a family member's request, we would be more likely to accept them. Bennett told Madeline that lying to us was completely unacceptable and that she had destroyed any trust we might have rebuilt over the previous few weeks. Madeline apologized repeatedly and begged Bennett to give her one more chance to prove she could help without causing problems. Bennett told Madeline that he needed time to think about whether she should be involved in the wedding at all anymore. Since then, Bennett has been extremely quiet and seems to be struggling with the decision about Madeline's involvement. He said he never imagined Madeline would lie to us about something so important. I told Bennett that I thought Madeline should not be involved in any wedding planning activities, but that she was still welcome to attend the wedding as a guest. Bennett said this felt like punishing Madeline too severely, but he admitted that he didn't know how to trust her with any responsibilities after she had lied about the venue changes. Yesterday, Bennett's aunt called again to say that Madeline was devastated about being excluded from wedding planning and that the family was concerned about Bennett's relationship with his sister. Bennett's aunt suggested that maybe Madeline's behavior was coming from a place of love and that we should try to forgive her mistakes. I'm tired of everyone in Bennett's family making excuses for Madeline's behavior. She has lied to us, forged my signature, and repeatedly ignored our boundaries, but everyone still wants us to include her because she means well. Bennett seems torn between supporting me and maintaining his relationship with Madeline. I'm starting to wonder if he will ever be able to prioritize our marriage over his sister's feelings. The wedding is in 6 weeks, and I don't know if we can resolve this situation without someone getting permanently hurt. Update 3. It's been 2 months since my last update, and my wedding was 3 weeks ago. A lot has happened, and I wanted to share how everything turned out. After Madeline lied about the venue changes, Bennett spent a week trying to decide what to do about her involvement in our wedding. He kept going back and forth between feeling betrayed by her lies and feeling guilty about excluding her. Bennett's extended family kept calling to tell him that Madeline was heartbroken and that he was being too harsh. His aunt even suggested that Madeline's behavior might be coming from depression about being single while watching Bennett get married. I told Bennett that Madeline's emotional state didn't excuse her lies and boundary violations, but Bennett said he felt responsible for Madeline's happiness because of everything she had sacrificed for him. Finally, I gave Bennett an ultimatum. I told him he could choose to prioritize his sister's feelings over our marriage, but that I wouldn't marry someone who couldn't put our relationship first. Bennett said I was being unfair by making him choose between his sister and his fiancé. I told Bennett that I wasn't asking him to choose between us as people, but that I needed him to choose between Madeline's wants and our wedding boundaries. Bennett took another week to think about this, and during that time, Madeline called him every day crying about how excluded she felt from his wedding. The breaking point came when Madeline showed up at our apartment unannounced with a key Bennett had given her years earlier. Bennett wasn't home, and Madeline let herself in while I was getting ready for work. Madeline said she wanted to talk about the wedding and make sure I understood how much Bennett meant to her. She said she had raised Bennett and that she deserved to have a role in his wedding celebration. I told Madeline that I understood their close relationship, but that her actions had made it impossible for us to trust her with wedding responsibilities. Madeline then said something that completely changed my perspective on the situation. She told me that Bennett would always choose her over me when it really mattered, because their bond was stronger than any marriage could be. Madeline said that Bennett had already proven this by defending her behavior throughout our engagement, and that I would never be as important to him as she was. I asked Madeline to leave immediately, and she said she would go but that I should think carefully about whether I wanted to marry someone who would never put me first. When Bennett got home that evening, I told him about Madeline's visit and what she had said. Bennett was upset that Madeline had used her key to enter our apartment without permission, but he said Madeline was probably just lashing out because she felt rejected. I asked Bennett if he thought Madeline was right about him always choosing her over me. Bennett said that was ridiculous and that he loved me more than anyone. But when I asked Bennett to prove this by telling Madeline she was no longer welcome at the wedding, Bennett said that was going too far and that he could not invite his own sister. I realized that Madeline had been right about Bennett's priorities. Even after everything that had happened, Bennett still couldn't choose our marriage over Madeline's presence at our wedding. I told Bennett that I needed a few days to think about whether I wanted to get married under these circumstances. I went to stay with my parents for a long weekend, and my mom helped me think through the situation. My mom pointed out that marriage problems that start before the wedding usually get worse after the wedding, not better. My mom also said that if Bennett couldn't set boundaries with Madeline now, he would probably never be able to do it, and that Madeline would interfere in our marriage for the rest of our lives. When I got back from my parents' house, I told Bennett that I would only marry him if he could prove that our marriage was his top priority. Bennett asked what I needed him to do, and I said he needed to tell Madeline that she could attend the wedding as a guest but that she would have no role in the ceremony or reception activities. Bennett said this was reasonable, and he called Madeline to explain the new boundaries. Madeline's reaction was extreme. She told Bennett that if he was going to treat her like a stranger at his wedding, then she didn't want to attend at all. Madeline said Bennett was choosing his fiancé over the person who had raised him, and that she was disappointed in the man he had become. Bennett tried to explain that setting boundaries didn't mean he loved Madeline any less, but Madeline said that if he really loved her, he would find a way to include her in his wedding celebration. Madeline then said she wouldn't come to the wedding at all, and that Bennett would have to live with knowing he had chosen his fiancé over his family. Bennett was devastated by Madeline's ultimatum, but I told him that Madeline was manipulating him by threatening to skip the wedding. Bennett agreed that Madeline was being manipulative, but he said he couldn't bear the thought of getting married without his sister there. 2 weeks before the wedding, Bennett asked me if I would be willing to give Madeline a small role in the ceremony, like doing a reading, just so she would agree to attend. I told Bennett that giving in to Madeline's manipulation would teach her that threatening to skip important events was an effective way to get what she wanted. Bennett said he understood my point, but that he didn't want to look back on our wedding day and regret that his sister wasn't there. I told Bennett that he needed to decide whether he wanted Madeline at our wedding because she genuinely wanted to celebrate our marriage, or because he was afraid of her emotional manipulation. Bennett called Madeline one more time to ask if she would attend the wedding without any special role in the ceremony. Madeline said no, and that Bennett would have to choose between having her there as part of the wedding party or not having her there at all. Bennett finally realized that Madeline was more interested in controlling the situation than in celebrating our marriage. Our wedding day arrived, and Madeline didn't attend. Bennett was sad about her absence, but he said he was proud of himself for not giving in to her ultimatum. The wedding was beautiful and exactly what Bennett and I had planned together. All of our other family members and friends were there to celebrate with us, and we had a wonderful time. Bennett's aunt made a few comments about Madeline's absence, but most people were focused on celebrating our marriage rather than discussing family drama. After the wedding, Madeline sent Bennett a long text message saying she was sorry for missing his wedding but that she couldn't attend an event where she wasn't valued. Madeline said she hoped Bennett would realize that he had made a mistake by prioritizing his wife over his sister, and that she would be waiting for him to apologize. Bennett showed me the text, and we both agreed that Madeline still didn't understand that her behavior had been the problem, not our reaction to it. Bennett texted Madeline back saying that he loved her and hoped they could rebuild their relationship, but that he wouldn't apologize for setting boundaries around his wedding. Madeline hasn't responded to Bennett's text, and it's been 3 weeks since the wedding. Bennett's aunt has called a few times to ask when Bennett plans to make things right with Madeline, but Bennett has told her that Madeline needs to acknowledge her mistakes before they can move forward. I'm proud of Bennett for finally standing up to Madeline, even though it cost him her presence at our wedding. Bennett and I are happily married now, and we're focused on building our life together. We both hope that Madeline will eventually be ready to have a healthy relationship with us, but we're not going to compromise our marriage to make that happen. The whole experience taught me that sometimes setting boundaries means losing people who aren't willing to respect those boundaries, but that protecting your marriage is worth that cost. Bennett has said that going through this situation before our wedding actually made our marriage stronger, because we learned how to support each other through family drama. We're both sad that Madeline chose not to be part of our wedding celebration, but we're grateful that we didn't let her control our special day. Now let's move to the next story. Story 2. I cut contact with my mother after she stole my inheritance to help my brother get his license back and start a new business. I, 28F, have spent my whole life watching my mother, 56F, put my brother Jake, 32M, first in everything. This started way before we lost Dad, but his death made everything worse. I have so many memories of Mom excusing Jake's behavior, no matter what he did. When I was 6, Jake pushed me off the swing set because he wanted to use it. I broke my arm, but Mom said it was my fault for not sharing. At age 8, Jake kept stealing money from my piggy bank. When Mom caught him, she just said I needed to share with my brother because he needed more than me. She even started giving him a bigger allowance because he was a growing boy. In 4th grade, I won first place in the science fair. Jake got angry because he didn't win anything, so he destroyed my project the night before it was supposed to go to the district competition. Mom made me apologize to him for making him feel bad about not winning. She bought him a new video game to make him feel better. Everything got worse after Dad died in a car accident when I was 12 and Jake was 16. Mom fell apart completely. She focused all her attention on Jake, saying he was taking Dad's death really hard and needed extra support. I was grieving too, but Mom told me I had to be strong for my brother. I ended up taking care of the house, cooking meals, and doing laundry because Mom was too busy comforting Jake. Jake started causing trouble in high school. He skipped classes, talked back to teachers, and got into fights. Mom always defended him, saying he was still processing Dad's death. When he was caught selling cigarettes to younger students at age 16, Mom transferred him to a different school. She told everyone the first school wasn't challenging enough for him. I worked hard in school, joined clubs, and had part-time jobs. Mom never came to any of my events. When I made honor roll, she missed the ceremony because Jake had detention. When I won a regional debate competition, she couldn't come because Jake needed help with his homework. Every achievement of mine was overshadowed by whatever Jake needed. The drinking started when Jake was 17. Mom found bottles in his room but kept it secret. At 18, he got drunk and crashed Mom's car. She took out a loan to hire an expensive lawyer who got the charges reduced to community service. 3 months later, he got another DUI. Mom refinanced the house to pay for another lawyer. By the time Jake was 25, he had 4 DUIs and lost his license. Mom became his personal driver, taking him everywhere. She woke up at 5 a.m. to drive him to work, picked him up for lunch, and drove him home. She lost a good job because she kept missing work to drive Jake around. When I suggested Jake take the bus, Mom said it wasn't safe and that families should help each other. I put myself through college with scholarships and jobs. My main job was at Chen's Sweet Shop, a local bakery. Mrs. Chen became like a real mother to me. She taught me about baking, business management, and dealing with customers. She showed me how to create recipes, manage inventory, and handle finances. When I graduated college, Mrs. Chen closed the bakery early to attend my ceremony because Mom couldn't come. Jake needed a ride to a job interview. Mrs. Chen even helped me develop a business plan for my own bakery. We spent hours going over potential locations, equipment costs, and marketing strategies. She introduced me to other bakery owners and suppliers. This wasn't just a dream, it was a real plan I had been working on for years. My grandmother, Dad's mom, was my biggest supporter. She visited me at Chen's every week to try my new recipes. She saw how Mom's favoritism was hurting both me and Jake. Grandma often told Mom that constantly bailing Jake out was making him worse, but Mom wouldn't listen. Grandma and I would talk for hours about my future bakery. She helped me research locations and equipment prices. Grandma passed away last year. In her will, she left me $50,000 specifically for opening my bakery. The money was supposed to be transferred 3 months ago. When it didn't appear, I contacted her lawyer. He said Mom had already collected it, claiming she would transfer it to me because I was too busy with work to handle it. I went to Mom's house about the money. Before I could ask, she started crying and admitted giving $45,000 to Jake. She claimed he needed it to get his license back and start a trucking business. She said Jake had a solid business plan and would pay me back double once he started making money. When I asked how she could take money that Grandma specifically left for my bakery, Mom said Jake's needs were more urgent. She suggested I could start my bakery with the remaining $5,000, saying many successful businesses start small. She kept talking about how Jake needed this chance to turn his life around. Jake came to my apartment that evening. Instead of apologizing, he acted like I was being difficult. He said since I had a good accounting job, I didn't need the money like he did. He talked about his trucking business plans and how he would pay me back with interest. When I mentioned Grandma left the money specifically for my bakery, he said Grandma always favored me anyway, so I shouldn't be greedy. I told them both I was done with their manipulation. I reminded Mom how Grandma had warned her about enabling Jake. Mom started crying, saying I was cruel for bringing up Grandma's opinions about her parenting. Jake said I was just jealous because Mom loved him more. I blocked their numbers and social media accounts. Now relatives from Mom's side keep calling me, saying I'm being too harsh. They say Jake deserves another chance and that family should support each other. None of them have offered to replace the money that was stolen from me. Update 1: Things have gotten much worse since my last post. After I blocked their numbers, Mom and Jake started showing up at my workplace. At first, they just waited in the parking lot during lunch breaks. Then they started coming in the morning before work. Jake would stand by my car, and Mom would try to talk to me as I walked into the building. My coworkers started noticing. Some of them saw Mom crying in the parking lot. Others heard Jake yelling at me about being selfish. My supervisor called me into her office to ask if I needed help. She said several employees felt uncomfortable with my family members hanging around the building. The situation got really bad last Tuesday when Jake tried to follow me into the office. Security had to stop him at the front desk. He started yelling so loud that people on the second floor could hear him. Mom was outside crying and telling everyone who walked by that I was breaking her heart. Security ended up banning them both from the property. Mom then started sending emails from different addresses after I blocked her main one. She wrote long messages about how I was destroying our family. She said God would punish me for turning my back on family. She sent emails to my work address too, which almost got me in trouble with HR. My uncle Pete, Mom's brother, started posting on Facebook about how I was a terrible daughter. He shared old family photos and wrote long posts about how much Mom had sacrificed for me. My cousins joined in, commenting about how selfish I was being. Some of them even contacted my friends to tell them what a horrible person I was. Then last weekend, everything changed when I ran into Jake's ex-girlfriend Sarah at the grocery store. Sarah and Jake dated for 2 years before breaking up 6 months ago. Mom never liked her because Sarah tried to get Jake to stop drinking and get a real job. When I mentioned Jake's new trucking business, Sarah started laughing. Sarah revealed there was no trucking business. Jake had been gambling illegally for over a year. He lost over $40,000 to some dangerous people who were threatening him. Sarah pulled out her phone and showed me months of text messages between her and Jake. In these messages, Jake bragged about convincing Mom to take my inheritance to pay off his gambling debts. The texts were awful to read. Jake called me stupid for believing the trucking business story. He told Sarah that Mom would always choose him over me, so it was easy to get her to steal my inheritance. He joked about how Grandma was dumb to trust me with money instead of him. There were even messages about how they planned to get the rest of Grandma's money that went to other family members. Sarah showed me more texts about Jake's gambling. He had been borrowing money from everyone he knew. He took $5,000 from their neighbor Mr. Wilson, claiming he needed it for medical bills. He borrowed $3,000 from his old high school friend Tom for a fake car repair business. Every time he got money, he would gamble it away trying to win back what he lost. I went straight to Mom's house with the screenshots. She tried denying it at first, saying Sarah was making things up because she was bitter about their breakup. But when I kept showing her more messages, she finally broke down and admitted everything. The gambling people had been coming to her house looking for Jake. They made threats about what would happen if he didn't pay. Mom said she had no choice but to give them my money to protect Jake. When I asked why she didn't sell her house or take out a loan instead of stealing my inheritance, she said she couldn't risk losing her home at her age. She said I was young enough to save up again for my bakery. She also admitted that Jake had used the remaining $5,000 to buy a used car, not to work on getting his license back. The truth about Jake's gambling was even worse than I thought. Mom revealed that Jake had been taking money from her for months before the inheritance theft. He emptied her savings account, took out credit cards in her name, and even sold her jewelry. She was close to bankruptcy but kept it secret from everyone. That's why she felt desperate enough to steal from me. Mom showed me threatening texts Jake had received from the gambling people. They knew where he lived, where Mom lived, and where he went every day. She said she was terrified they would hurt him if she didn't help pay his debts. But when I asked if she had gone to the police about the threats, she said Jake wouldn't let her because he was afraid of getting in trouble. Update 2: Last week, I received a certified letter from Grandma's lawyer that changed everything. While reviewing the estate paperwork, he discovered that Mom had forged my signature on multiple documents to get access to the inheritance. The lawyer found discrepancies in 5 different signatures. He had them verified by a handwriting expert who confirmed they were forgeries. The lawyer said he had a legal obligation to report this to the authorities. Mom called me immediately after the lawyer contacted her. She was crying and begging me not to let them press charges. She revealed that Jake had threatened to move across the country and never speak to her again if she didn't help him with the gambling debts. When that didn't work, he threatened to tell everyone about how she had helped him cover up his previous DUIs. She said Jake knew exactly how to manipulate her using her fear of losing him like she lost Dad. The police investigation into the forgery uncovered more of Jake's schemes. They found that Jake had scammed at least 3 other people in the past 2 years. He would create fake business plans, complete with forged documents and fake references. He even made fake websites for his non-existent companies to convince people to invest. One victim was Mr. and Mrs. Peterson, an elderly couple from our church. They gave him $25,000 from their retirement savings to invest in a fake construction company. Jake told them he was getting government contracts to build low-income housing. He showed them fake paperwork and even took them to look at buildings he claimed his company would be renovating. Another victim was his former high school teacher, Miss Thompson. She loaned him $15,000 for a non-existent food truck business. Jake knew she had recently inherited money from her mother. He spent weeks convincing her that food trucks were a great investment. He even had Mom cook food for a fake tasting event to convince Ms. Thompson the business was real. The third victim was Tom Wilson, a recent college graduate who had saved money for graduate school. Jake convinced him to invest $10,000 in a fake tech startup. He promised Tom a high-paying job once the company launched. Tom had to delay his graduate school plans when he lost all his savings. The investigation revealed that Mom knew about these scams. She had actually helped Jake cover them up by paying off some of his victims with her retirement money. She paid the Petersons $10,000 to keep quiet about losing their money. She gave Ms. Thompson $8,000 and begged her not to go to the police. She even wrote a letter to Tom's parents apologizing and promising to pay back the money. That's why Mom was so desperate to use my inheritance. She had depleted her own savings helping Jake avoid consequences. The police found bank records showing she had withdrawn over $50,000 from her retirement account in the past year. She also took out 3 personal loans to help pay Jake's victims. The police discovered Jake's pattern of targeting people who knew our family. He used Mom's good reputation in the community to make his fake businesses seem legitimate. At church gatherings, he would talk about his business plans where potential victims could hear. He asked Mom to vouch for him to people she knew, using her trust to gain theirs. Some victims didn't report him because they felt bad for Mom. Jake would tell them that reporting him would break our mother's heart. He reminded them of how she had lost Dad and said she couldn't handle losing her son too. He used our family's tragedy to manipulate people's sympathy. The investigation also found that Jake started these scams right after losing his license. Without being able to drive, he couldn't keep a regular job. Instead of trying to get his license back, he started creating fake businesses to get money. He used some of the money for gambling, telling himself he would win enough to pay everyone back. Update 3: Jake was arrested 2 weeks ago after trying to start another scam. The police found evidence of 7 different schemes he had run. They tracked down all his victims, including several elderly neighbors who had known our family for years. The total amount he stole reached over $120,000. Some victims had taken out loans or used their retirement savings to give him money. I decided to press charges against Mom for forging my signature. Her lawyer offered a settlement where she would sell her house to pay back my inheritance plus legal fees. She refused the deal, saying she needed to save money for Jake's legal defense. She still thinks Jake needs her help more than I need my inheritance back. The stress of everything caused Mom to take medical leave from her job. She sent me a long email saying I was killing her by pursuing legal action. She wrote that her real daughter would forgive her mother and drop the charges. When that didn't work, she had our pastor call me to talk about forgiveness. The pastor told me that pressing charges against my own mother would damage my soul. Most of Mom's family stopped speaking to me. My aunts told everyone I was trying to put my own mother in jail just for helping my troubled brother. Uncle Pete started a fundraiser for Mom's legal fees, telling people I was trying to make my mother homeless. But Dad's side of the family supports me. They remember how Grandma tried to stop Mom from enabling Jake. They started a small fund to help me save for my bakery again. Mrs. Chen from the bakery reached out after hearing what happened. She offered me part-time work at her new location and said she would teach me more about running a business. She even offered to be a reference when I apply for business loans in the future. Last week, I moved to a different city. I found an apartment and a new job at an accounting firm. I haven't told any family members where I moved. Mom's lawyer called again yesterday, trying to convince me to drop the charges. He said Mom was willing to pay me back $100 a month if I would stop the legal proceedings. I refused. Jake's trial date is set for next month. He's facing multiple fraud charges, and the prosecutor says he could get several years in prison. Mom keeps calling from different numbers, begging me to write a letter to the judge asking for leniency. She says Jake made mistakes but doesn't deserve jail time. Some people from our old church say I should show mercy since Mom was just trying to protect Jake. My cousin Amy sent me a long message about how families should forgive each other. But I can't forget how they laughed at my dreams and treated me like I was wrong for wanting what was legally mine. The court date for Mom's forgery case is next month. I'm not backing down. This isn't just about the money anymore, it's about finally standing up to years of manipulation and favoritism. I'm done sacrificing my future to enable Jake's behavior and Mom's delusions. Maybe facing real consequences will finally make them both realize what they've done. For now, I'm focusing on building my new life. I've started therapy to deal with all this, and I'm slowly saving money again for my bakery. It might take longer than I planned, but I'll get there without their help or interference.